Welcome to the African History Network show. It is Thursday, January 27th, 2022, and we are live. So, one of the stories today, in addition to uh, the press conference that Joe Biden and Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer had today, formally announcing that Stephen Breyer is going to retire from the U.S. Supreme Court. He said he'll serve out the rest of this term, which ends around June or so, because the new term starts up October 23rd. But and he said he's going to stay on until his successor has been confirmed by the U.S. Senate. So there's a backlash that this decision to nominate an African American female to the Supreme Court. This is getting from the right wing and Fox News and the a bunch of white supremacist things like this, the Tucker Carlsons and a lot of these idiots on Fox News and conservative talk radio. But also, one of the other stories today is that today is the International Day of Remembrance of the Holocaust, International Holocaust Remembrance Day. International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And today commemorates in 1945 when Soviet troops liberated the prisoners at Auschwitz in Poland, the Auschwitz concentration camps. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that history, but we're going to deal with some of the Afro-Germans, some of the black people who were killed during the Holocaust that don't get talked about in history. Okay, because there were about 50,000 Afro-Germans that were killed also during the Holocaust. And like I was reading an article today from the Associated Press, and it didn't mention the Afro-Germans that were killed. And oftentimes when you have talk about the Holocaust and you have International Holocaust Remembrance Day and things like this, the Afro-Germans, the people of African descent, don't get talked about because the Nazis were killing Afro-Germans and doing experiments on Afro-Germans as well. So there is a new memorial in Berlin that honors two of the Black Holocaust victims that are often overlooked. So we'll talk some about that history. And I've talked about this before on this show. There's also a documentary that came out a couple of years ago that deals with being black in Nazi Germany, okay, from film director Ama Asante. So we'll talk a little bit about this on today's show. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, email me at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We know African American History Month is coming up. So email me at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Now, the first story that I want to jump into, I saw an article from Black Enterprise dealing with this. And we're going to go to clip one here in just a second, Shakita. Saw an article from Black Enterprise dealing with this. And this deals with enrollment at medical schools for African-American students. 2021 enrollment at African-Americans at medical schools for African-American students increased by 21%. So there were a record number of African Americans enrolling into the first year of medical school in the year 2021. It increased by 21%, and there's some contributing factors to this. I want to look at this piece here from blackenterprise.com, and this is good news. This is information reported from the Association of American Medical Colleges, okay, the AAMC, Association of American Medical Colleges. If we look at this article here from Black Enterprise from January 7th, 2022, Black students are enrolling at medical schools at record levels. Black medical school students may perhaps be among those who help fill a predicted deficit of doctors across the country in upcoming years. So we know that especially because of coronavirus, there's been a strain on doctors as well as nurses. Okay, and you've had some. Well, we know we have some that have passed away, but you have some that have retired and some that have just left the profession altogether. Now, of the 22,000 students who started medical school last fall, okay, fall 2021, those who identified as Black or African American increased by 21% for the year 2021 over 2020, based on new data from the Association of American Colleges, AAMC, Association of American Colleges. The nonprofit association disclosed that the first year class from last year, 2021, is the largest and most diverse than any previous class per WGBH News out of Boston. And also, they're citing the data coming from the Association of American Medical Colleges, the AAMC. Now, the rise of AAMC, the rise comes after AAMC data revealed in June of 2021 that the United States could see estimated shortages between 37,800 and 124,000 physicians by the year 2034. So we know people are living longer, but so there's an increased need for physicians projecting outward, but also because of the strain that COVID has put on hospitals, doctors and nurses and support staff are leaving the profession. So this is critical. There's an estimated shortage of between 37,000 to 124,000 physicians by the year 2034, and African American physicians and medical students are going to fill a lot of that void. The data pointed out that it could contain shortfalls in primary and specialty care. Now, Norma Pohl Hunter, who leads workforce diversity efforts at the AAMC, told WGBH News, "We have never seen such an increase within a short amount of time. We have never seen such an increase within a short amount of time." She mentioned research that reveals that patients are more inclined to identify better with their care when their doctors resemble them across all races. Patients are more inclined to identify with their care when their doctors resemble them across all races. We'll continue this on the other side of the break, and the data shows 5% of U.S. doctors are African American. We'll continue this on the other side of the break, and we'll also talk about the Afro-Germans and people of African descent that were killed during the Holocaust that oftentimes get left out of International Holocaust Remembrance Day. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by. All right. Our email address is TheAHNShow at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AHNShow at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Back from break in 4 minutes. If you want me to do a presentation for a group organization, especially for African American History Month, email me at ahnshow at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, you can still register for the online classes I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. Saturdays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Well, that's on Sunday. Sundays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Sundays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then Saturday is from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have a special discount right now. You can register for both classes for only $70. They're regularly $130 each. So this promotion is going on for a very limited time only. As soon as you register, you can start watching the classes. You can start watching the archived information. And we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. You still have access to the full class after the class is over with also. All right, Cookie, how you doing? Winston-Salem. Okay, if you want me to do a presentation for a group organization, I could do it in person. I can do it virtually. Email me at ahnshow at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and we can make it happen. And the presentations I do for African American History Month, you've never seen anything like that before. I deal with the origins of African American History Month. I deal with a lot. I can fit it into whatever time frame you have. So let me know. All right, stand by. Okay, I'm going to post the information here so you can register for the online classes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Thursday, January 27th, 2022, and we are live. Calling numbers 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. Okay, be sure to register for the online classes I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. Saturday, it is from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. This is a 10-week online course that I teach, and we deal with history leading up to the Civil War, and then we deal with the history from 1865 to 1968. It's at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's on sale $50, regularly $130. We do it Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch them anytime. You still have access to the full class even after the course is over with. And then on Sundays, I teach Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So we do this Sundays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book articles. We have book references, articles, video clips, everything. That class is on sale $60, regularly $130. We have a special bundle pack. You can register for both classes for a very limited time only for only $70. Okay, so that's at African History Network. Just posted the link here on the thread of the broadcast. Okay, I want to go back to this story here dealing with African American enrollment at medical schools, which is really critical to fill this coming void of doctors. Okay, it's estimated that by the year 2034, there's going to be a shortage of between 37,800 to 124,000 physicians. Okay. And African American physicians are going to fill a lot of that void. Now, the AAMC estimates that 5%, data from the AAMC, Association of American Medical Colleges, shows that 5% of US doctors are African American doctors. Now, Norma Pole Hunter, who works in diversity for the AAMC, said that when Black physicians, male physicians, are working with Black male patients, we see better outcomes in preventive care or on cardiac care. When Black physicians, male physicians, are working with Black male patients, we see better outcomes in preventative care or on cardiac care. We've also seen that in terms, we've also seen that in terms of infant mortality as well. Now, several factors are fueling the uptick of students. They include COVID-19, the murder of George Floyd, and growing health disparities for African Americans, observers say. They add that schools are implementing new ways to attract and trim medical college entry barriers for students of color. However, the excessive cost of medical school is a snag to luring students of color. The excessive cost of medical school is a snag to luring students of color. According to WGBH News out of Boston, graduates on average end up with over $240,000 in school debt. Medical school graduates end up with over $200,000 in school debt on average. I want to go to this clip here from the Black News Channel from January 25th, 2022, that talks about this 21% increase in enrollment for first year medical students, African American medical students. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
Tonight, that could help close the racial gap in healthcare disparities. BNC's Jameez Price reports there's a boost in Black student enrollment at medical schools across the country.
Medical schools made changes to their admission process, waiving application fees and interviewing candidates remotely. Some of these factors were a benefit for Black applicants. More Black students are enrolling in medical school, making this year's class more diverse than any before it. This year, more than 2,100 Black students started their med school journey. 3 years ago, that number was just over 1,500. Admission counselors can't pinpoint only one factor for the increase. Instead, it has been a combination of factors, from the pandemic to social justice issues that were brought to the forefront in 2020.
I just believe that it was just a perfect storm of everything happening at once, as far as you had this horrendous pandemic that came through that affected the Black community and New York, well, underrepresented medicine communities more than other communities. And so you had this almost this calling of like, all right, I want to be the catalyst of change, and I want to be able to affect change where I can see it the most in my community.
Tulane University Medical School in New Orleans experienced a 10% increase in enrollment in Black students. LSU Health New Orleans School of Medicine also saw a double-digit jump of African American students.
I've always wanted to be a physician. I don't think there's any better way to serve the people you care about or your community than trying to treat their health and trying to extend their lives and give them a better quality of living. But growing up, there seemed to be a lack of physicians who looked like myself.
First-year student Jonathan Leger says it was a welcome surprise to see other students who looked like him.
I was very pleased to see that, and see that especially in New Orleans, where the majority of the population that the physicians will be treating are African American, that the physicians that they're training were more representative of the city's population.
Enrollment is increasing, but paying for tuition remains a challenge. According to the Education Data Initiative, 50% of Black medical school graduates are more than $200,000 in debt. African American med students owe more on average than their peers of any other race or ethnicity.
We do lose a lot of students that get accepted, and I wish would come here, but the price is a main factor.
Students say making financial opportunities readily available could alleviate some of the stress and strain they experience during med school. In New Orleans, I'm Janice Price for BNC.
If you struggle to...
All right. Yeah, pause it right there. Okay. So great reporting from Jamise Price for Black News Channel. That's from January 25th, 2022. So I want to go back quickly here to this article from Black Enterprise from January 7th that talks about this as well. And the article goes on to say, after it talks about on average, medical school graduates end up with $240,000 in debt once they graduate. Dr. Cedric Bright, Dean of Admissions at East Carolina University's Medical School, told WGBH News in Boston, he said, "We perpetuate that issue because we give scholarships for merit and scholarships for need. We give scholarships for merit and not scholarships for need." Okay. He said, we've got to find ways to decrease the cost of medical school. All right. So check out this piece here from Black Enterprise. Black students are enrolling at medical schools at record levels. This is by Jeffrey McKinney, January 7th, 2022 for blackenterprise.com. All right, I want to go to this next story, and then also the call-in number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. So one of the things I do when I first get up in the morning, I start reading news stories, and I get the emails from history.com every morning dealing with this day in history. And when I opened the email this morning, it's about 7 a.m., 7 a.m., something like that. First thing I saw is Auschwitz is liberated, January 27, 1945. So today is the International Remembrance of the Holocaust, International Holocaust Remembrance Day. There's a piece from the Associated Press I was looking at also that talks about this. Now, in most of the articles and I was watching stories today on MSNBC dealing with this, and most of the information that you see dealing with the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, most of that information does not include the Afro-Germans that the Nazis were killing also, okay? Most of the conversation today, you would not think that there were Afro-Germans in Germany. All right, and hold on just a second here. This is freezing up on me. Just a second. All right. So there's a story from the Associated Press. World remembers Holocaust as anti-Semitism rises in pandemic. Okay. And I don't have a problem with talking about the Holocaust, but it's like, wait a second. There were African people who were killed also. You got to deal with them as well. World remembers Holocaust as anti-Semitism rises in pandemic. Okay. And then this piece here from history.com deals with Auschwitz. And let me see, is this the one I want? Okay, we'll deal with this on the other side of break. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Okay, back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by, everybody. Okay, who still needs to register for the online classes I teach on Saturdays and Sundays? All right, stand by. Back from break in 3 minutes. Back from break in 2 minutes. Stand by. Back from break in 1 minute.
Network show, we deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Unfortunately, many people confuse what racism is. Racism is a power structure. It was laws and policies that put us in this predicament. It's going to be laws and policies that take us out. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the compass of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know.
We have it all on 910 AM Superstation. 910, the Superstation, Detroit's only African-American talk radio.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Thursday, January 27th, 2022. And we are live. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. And today is also International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And we were talking about that right before the break, because oftentimes when we talk about the Holocaust, the Afro-Germans and people of African descent that were killed by the Nazis somehow get left out of the conversation. So the reason why January 27th is International Holocaust Remembrance Day is because it commemorates the prisoners in the Auschwitz, Poland concentration camps being liberated by the Soviet troops. All right. So this piece here is from history.com. Is one of the first things I read this morning because I get the emails from them every morning. Auschwitz is liberated. This is from this day in history. January 27th, 1945, Soviet troops enter Auschwitz, Poland, freeing the survivors of the network of concentration camps and finally revealing to the world the depth of the horrors perpetuated there at Auschwitz. Now, Auschwitz was really a group of camps, a group of concentration camps designated 1, 2, and 3 with Roman numerals. There were also 40 smaller satellite camps. Now, it was at Auschwitz at Birkenau, established in October 1941, that the SS created a complex, monstrously orchestrated killing ground, 300 prison barracks, 4 bathhouses or gas chambers, corpse cellars, and cremating ovens. Thousands of prisoners were also used for medical experiments overseen and performed by the camp doctor Joseph Mengele, who is also known as the Angel of Death. Okay. Now, this is at Auschwitz. This is during World War II. So this is an important part of history because you have a rise in anti-Semitism that's taking place now. And usually when there's a rise in anti-Semitism, a rise in anti-Blackness, anti-African sentiments usually are not too far behind. Now, the Red Army had been advancing deeper into Poland since mid-January, having liberated Warsaw and Krakow, Krakow, Krakow. Soviet troops headed for Auschwitz. In anticipation of the Soviet arrival, SS officers, the Nazis, SS officers began a murder spree in the camps, shooting sick prisoners and blowing up crematoria in a desperate attempt to destroy the evidence of their crimes. Now, when the Red Army, the Soviets, finally broke through, Soviet soldiers encountered 648 corpses and more than 7,000 starving camp survivors. There were also six storehouses filled with hundreds of thousands of women's dresses, men's suits, and shoes that the Germans did not have time to burn. Now, there are approximately 1.1 million people killed at Auschwitz. We know that there were approximately 6 million Jews killed during the Holocaust, during World War II by the Nazis. But there were also millions more of there were also Polish and those from Roma and many others that were killed as well. There were about 50,000 Afro-Germans that were killed that never get talked about. Now, there's a piece from the Associated Press today that I read as well. So I monitor about 35 different news sources on a daily basis. I'll be back on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday as a panelist. I'm usually a panelist each Friday. I read this article here from the Associated Press. World remembers Holocaust as anti-Semitism rises in pandemic. Now, once again, I have no problem with the history of the Holocaust being taught and things like this, but I find it interesting that when we talk about World War II and the Holocaust and the Nazis and Jews being killed, we don't talk about the Africans that Hitler was killing also. All right, let me close this out. What the hell? What is this coming up? We don't talk about the Africans Hitler was killing as well. So if we look at this piece here from the Associated Press, survivors recalled their agony today Survivors recall their agony to a world they fear is forgetting. Survivors recalled their agony to a world they fear is forgetting. Israelis paramilitary speaker wept in the German parliament, and politicians warned of a resurgence of anti-Semitism on Thursday's International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And one of the things that I saw on MSNBC today is them saying that in schools today, the Holocaust is not being taught a lot, like nationwide. People don't know what Auschwitz is and things like this. Okay, now Americans are very ignorant of history in the first place. We talk about that. Americans are very ignorant of the U.S. Constitution as well. All you have to do is go look at the January 19th, 2021 story from CBS News, CBS This Morning, and it deals with how Americans are very ignorant of the U.S. Constitution. Okay, so if they don't know, if they're ignorant of the U.S. Constitution, which is the foundation of law in this country and comes out of a historical context in this country, then it's a good chance they don't understand history as well. All right. And the name of that piece from CBS is called "Most Americans Don't Know What's in the Constitution, a Crisis of Civic Education." Most Americans don't know what's in the U.S. Constitution. Most Americans don't know what's in the Constitution, a crisis of civic education. This is why my friends who are reparations activists and things like this is why I'm explaining to them as a historian, America must have a massive history lesson, because Americans don't understand history or law. And you trying to get reparations to repair the damage of a history that most Americans don't even understand. Most Americans don't know what's in the Constitution, a crisis of civic education, January 19th, 2021. This is from CBS News. Okay, go read this and watch the video that's in there also. All right, now, if we go back to this piece here from the Associated Press, and I want to go to this story here from Smithsonian Mag that talks about the memorial that's in Berlin. But I got to give you this background information because a lot of people don't know this. So survivors recall their agony to a world they fear is forgetting about the atrocities of the Holocaust. The day falls on the anniversary of the nation by Soviet troops of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the most notorious of the death camps where Nazi Germany carried out its final solution, seeking to murder the Jewish people of Europe. Now, at the memorial site in Poland, which was subjected to a brutal German occupation during World War II, a small number of survivors gathered in an auditorium. Attendance at the yearly event was sharply curtailed amid Europe's coronavirus surge. Others joined online. Now, Nazi German forces killed 1.1 million people at Auschwitz, most of them Jews, but also Poles, Roma, and others. Now, okay, then it goes on to say on page 2 of the article, there were some people present who were survivors of the Holocaust, and they spoke. Now, this is, when it comes to reparations for us, one of the disadvantages we have is that all the last known slaves died in the 1950s. So you don't have any people who are survivors, who are former slaves, who can actually talk, give firsthand accounts. Now, U.S. government interviewed people in the 1940s. Okay, that's on record, but you don't have people who are still alive today who can give you that firsthand account. Now, about 6 million European Jews and millions of people were killed by the Nazis and their collaborators. Some 1.5 million were children. Okay, so read the rest of this here. We're coming up, once again, this article from the Associated Press. World remembers Holocaust as anti-Semitism rises in pandemic. Now, it's important to understand that the way you treat a people largely has to do with what you know about a people. What you know about a people largely has to do with what you've been taught about a people. What you've been taught about a people largely has to do with what you've read, heard, and seen about a people. When we come back from the break, we'll talk about new memorials in Berlin honor the Holocaust, overlooked Black victims that don't get talked about on days like today. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. All right, stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes. 4 minutes. Back from break in 4 minutes. Share this broadcast on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Because we're on 6 days a week. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. I just posted the link also. You can register for the online classes I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. We have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Also, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement of Black Power, 1865 to 1968. On Saturdays and Sundays, it is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Back from break in 2 minutes. So we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. I would say the content is PG-13. You can use this with your children also. The class is very visual. You can see me. I can't see you. So it's not like Zoom, like at work, like a Zoom meeting. But we have a live text chat so you can ask questions also. And we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. So even if you missed a class, you can go back and watch it. You still have full access to the class even after the class is over with. Okay, Vernal, how you doing? Okay, also, if you want me to do a presentation for African American History Month or any other time, if you want me to be on a panel discussion, what have you, email me at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And we can make it happen. I could do a virtual presentation. I can do, if you want to bring me in, if you want to fly me in, we could do in-person presentation. And then also, if you want me to teach one of these classes, welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. All right, if you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, African American History Month is coming up, Women's History Month, Juneteenth. Email me at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We can work out the details. I can do in-person. I can do virtual presentations. The online classes that I teach, if you want me to modify those classes to teach them for your church, your organization, your school, what have you, email me at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and we can make it happen. All right. Right before the break, we were talking about this new memorial that is in Berlin honoring the victims, honoring Black victims of the Holocaust that usually don't get talked about when we deal with the Holocaust during World War II. Okay, and Nazis killing the Jews and other Europeans. New memorials in Berlin honor the Holocaust overlooked Black victims. Overlooked is an understatement. 2 brass stumbling stones are among the first to memorialize the Afro-German people murdered by the Nazis. Now, this article is from December 3rd, 2021, for Smithsonian Mag, Smithsonian Institute. Though people of African ancestry were among the millions murdered by the Nazis during World War II, their persecution is often overlooked in accounts of the Holocaust horrors. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Now, one of the reasons why is because as African Americans, we don't know our own history, so we can't articulate it to be interjected when these conversations come up, because we don't know our history. And two, Americans are very ignorant of history in general, so many people don't know about this as well. There was a survey that came out back in June of 2021 when Juneteenth became a federal holiday. And we talked about Juneteenth here on this show, and we dealt with how the history of Juneteenth has to be corrected and protected. But it was a study that New York Times had this article, another MSNBC talked about this as well. 62% of Americans did not know or knew very little about Juneteenth. Okay. So if they didn't know about Juneteenth, then how much history do you think they know about the history of slavery? Because Juneteenth is tied to the history of slavery. All right. And I'll try to pull that article up here from, we'll try to pull that one up from, that is from New York Times. I'll try to pull that up. All right, now let's continue here. Okay, so Jennifer Neal reports for Atlas Obscura, newly unveiled memorials in Berlin seek to bring attention to two of these oft forgotten Black victims of African descent, Martha Ndumbe and Ferdinand James Allen. Now, officials installed stumbling stones honoring Ndumbe and Allen earlier in 2021, a type of memorial common in Germany and other European countries. The brass plaques typically commemorate victims of the Holocaust, though they number in the tens of thousands. Few memorialized Black people until now. Now, Sophia Schmitz, a historian with the Berlin-based Stolperstein Project, tells Atlas Obscura the Black victims of the Nazis have long not been considered. I wonder why. The Black victims of the Nazis have long not been considered, neither by academic research nor by memorial politics. We just can't get a break. We're like Rodney Dangerfield, just can't get no respect. Just can't catch a break. Quote, but in a town like Berlin, a Black community in the 1920s and 30s did exist, all of whom were at first harassed and later, more often than not, murdered during Nazi rule. It is our aim to uncover their stories and make them present again, late as it is, end quote. Now, when the Nazis came to power in Germany in 1933 and Hitler became German chancellor in 1933, Germany was home to around 1,500 to 2,000 Black residents, as well as a significant number of Black performers, athletes, and diplomats who were temporarily living in the city. Robbie Aitken, a historian at Sheffield Hallam University, tells Harrison Mollema of Deutsche Welle. Now, Aiken, the historian Robbie Aiken says, already around 1933, some Black men and their families had left Germany because of the rise of the Nazis. Some of the country's permanent Black residents hailed from Germany's colonies in Africa. Some of the country's permanent Black residents hailed from Germany's colonies in Africa. Okay, like Namibia was one of the colonies where millions of Africans were killed by the Germans. Others were descendants of Black French army personnel stationed in Germany after World War I, and World War I ends in 1918. A group tarred with the racist label Rhineland, they call them the B word, not that B, the other B word, okay. In 1937, notes the Weiner Holocaust Library, approximately 385 of these 600 to 800 children were forcibly sterilized by Nazi regime. Now, there's also a story that history.com has that deals with how the Nuremberg laws were patterned after the segregation laws here in the US, because Hitler learned a lot of what he did to the Nazis by the way that the US treated African Americans. Maybe that's why they don't want to talk about this history. Maybe that's why they want to bury it. Okay, those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep going for a few more minutes. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $, the AHN Show through Cash App and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. Right now, knowledge corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace. All right, stand by. Okay, so there was, I want to go back to this clip here. I want to go back to this story from Smithsonian, but there was an article from history.com that deals with the Nuremberg laws. Let me pull that one up here. And it talks about, okay. I think this is the one I want. Nuremberg racial laws imposed. Oh, this is what I want right here. This is it right here. See, this is why they don't want to talk about a lot of this stuff. Now, history, you have historians that know this, okay? A lot of people don't want to deal with this. So they want to, like, when they have International Holocaust Remembrance Day, you know, oftentimes they don't even bring us up, because this gets into something deeper. If you really deal with the history, this gets into something deeper. This is from history.com, official website of the History Channel. How the Nazis were inspired by Jim Crow. How the Nazis were inspired by Jim Crow to craft legal discrimination. The Third Reich studied the United States. I bet you in the states that are passing laws banning critical race theory, I bet you they don't want this talk. In 1935, Nazi Germany passed two radically discriminatory pieces of legislation: the Reich Citizenship Law and the Law for Protection of German Blood and German Honor. The Reich Citizenship Law and the Law for Protection of German Blood and German Honor. Together, these were known as the Nuremberg laws, and they laid the legal groundwork for the persecution of Jewish people during the Holocaust and World War II, because the Holocaust starts before World War II begins. Now, When the Nazis set out to legally disenfranchise and discriminate against Jewish citizens, they weren't just coming up with ideas out of the thin air. No. No, they ain't just make this stuff up now. No, you gotta see, to understand the existence of something, you must first understand the pre-existence of existence. And this is why a lot of this history, people don't want to talk about this stuff. They weren't just coming up with these ideas out of thin air. They closely studied the laws of another country, the land of the free and the home of the brave. According to James Q. Whitman, author of Hitler's American Model, that country that the Nazis studied to come up with the Nuremberg laws was the United States of America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. America in the early 20th century was the leading racist jurisdiction in the world, said James Q. Whitman, who is a professor at Yale Law School, Yale University. Nazi lawyers, as a result, were interested in looking very closely at and were ultimately influenced by American race law. In particular, Nazis admired the Jim Crow era laws that discriminated against Black Americans and segregated them from white Americans. And they debated whether to introduce similar segregation in Germany. But the Germans ultimately decided that it would not go far enough. They ultimately decided that the Jim Crow laws didn't go far enough. One of the most striking Nazi views was that Jim Crow was a suitable racist program in the United States because American Blacks were already oppressed and poor. He says, okay, Professor Whitman. But then in Germany, by contrast, where the Jews, as the Nazis imagined it, were rich and powerful, as the Nazis imagined it, all of them weren't, but as the Nazis imagined it, the Jews were rich and powerful, it was necessary to take more severe measures. But they did, the Nazis did study the Jim Crow laws here and patterned the Nuremberg laws after it. They just went farther. They said the Jim Crow laws didn't go far enough. Okay, now I'm going to come back to that in just a second here. Okay, just a second here. Let me see. Let me put this. All right. Okay, let's continue. So because of this, all right, so the Nazis are saying the Jim Crow laws didn't go far enough, even though they studied them. Okay. Now, because of this, Nazis were more interested in how the U.S. had designed, how the U.S. had designated Native Americans, Filipinos, and other groups as non-citizens, even though they lived in the U.S. or its territories. These models influenced the citizenship portion of the Nuremberg laws, which stripped Jewish Germans of their citizenship and classified them as nationals. Okay, Nazis were more, because the Nazis felt that the Jim Crow laws didn't go far enough. They were more interested in how the U.S. designated Native Americans, Filipinos, and other groups as non-citizens, even though these groups lived in the U.S. or its territories. These models influenced the citizenship portion of the Nuremberg laws, which stripped Jewish Germans of their citizenship and classified them as nationals. But a component of the Jim Crow era that Nazis did think they could translate into Germany were anti-miscegenation laws, which prohibited interracial marriages in 30 of 48 states in the US. Because it wasn't until 1967 that interracial marriages became legal in all of the states. That was the Loving case, okay, 1967. Quote, America had by a wide margin the harshest law of this kind, okay, anti-miscegenation laws. They even had those going back to slavery, okay, and a lot of it had to do with going back to Europe and the African Moors being in Europe and the Moors intermixing with the European population, changing the complexion of Europeans. See, a lot of that goes back to that because the Moors were in England, and the 13 colonies, these were English colonies. So the Moors were in England also. Now, Spain and Portugal are going to get the brunt of the intermixing of the Moors and intermixing into the bloodline, changing the complexion. England gets it to a lesser extent because England is further away from Morocco, where the Moors are going from Morocco into the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal. Sicily gets it, Italy gets it, England gets it to a lesser extent, but it's in England. This is how you get a Queen Charlotte Sophia. Queen Charlotte Sophia, who was the wife of King George III, and when Meghan Markle married Prince Harry in 2018, I think it was. They got married on May 19th. That was Queen Charlotte Sophia's birthday. There's an article from the Washington Post, Meghan Markle, Queen Charlotte, and the wedding of Britain's first mixed race royal. But and a lot of and there were articles at the time saying, "Oh, we're gonna get a black queen." Well, she became the Duchess of Sussex. She wasn't even a queen, but she wasn't the first mixed race royal, and she wasn't the first mixed race queen of England. This is Queen Charlotte Sophia. Queen Charlotte Sophia was of African Moorish ancestry on at least her mother's side of the family, and she was the wife of King George III. Okay, Charlotte. Sophia Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz. She was the wife of King George III. Who is King George III? King George III was the king that the 13 colonies are fighting against during the American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783. His wife was of African descent. So you can read this. This is stuff that we get deep into this type of information in the online classes I teach. And this is one of the articles we look at. All right, let's see. Let me close some of this stuff out here. Okay, there we go. If we look at this here, it deals with their African Moorish ancestry. Prince Henry, is this the right one? Okay, yeah. Historian Mario de Valdez e Cocum argues that Charlotte was directly descended from a black branch of the Portuguese royal family. Alfonso III and his concubine, Orana, a black Moor. Alfonso III and his concubine, Orana, who was a black Moor. In the 13th century, Alfonso III of Portugal conquered a little town named Faro, F-A-R-O, from the Moors. Now, Valdez is a researcher of the 1996 Frontline PBS documentary Secret Daughter, and he said in the interview with the Washington Post. Now, according to Valdez, one of their sons, Martin Alfonso, married into the noble de Souza family of Portugal, which also had black ancestry, because the Moors are all going all throughout Europe: Spain, Portugal, Italy, France, Austria, Germany, Czechoslovakia. They're all throughout Europe. And thus, Charlotte had African blood from both families. Queen Charlotte Sophia had African blood from both families. When you go and look at older paintings of her, she has more Africoid features. The more recent paintings of her, she had more European features and had a lighter skin complexion. If we go, let's see here. I have her in a presentation because we talk about her class. Queen Charlotte Sophia. Hold on. Let's look at the most famous painting of her right here by Sir Alan Rees, 1762. All right, let's see here. Hold on. All right. Stand by. Hold on. So this is the most famous painting of Queen Charlotte Sophia. And she was of African ancestry really on both sides of her family. She was the wife to King George III. Here's another depiction of her as well. Now the show on Netflix, Bridgerton, that I've never watched before. They have a depiction of Queen Charlotte Sophia in there. Let me see. There's been a few articles written on this also. Yeah, okay, like this one right here from marieclaire.com, what Bridgerton got right about Queen Charlotte. Like this article right here. But Bridgerton got right about Queen Charlotte. She's widely believed to be Britain's first biracial royal. I don't think she was the first one. You've probably figured out by now that Bridgerton isn't exactly based on a true story. Blah, blah, blah. Formal balls, 1800s, blah, blah, blah. Still, there's plenty that the period drama does get right. The social, I mean, damn, man, come on. These ads out of here. Let me see. Queen Charlotte. Queen Charlotte may have actually been black. Many historians believe that the royal born Sophia Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz in 1744 did indeed descend from African ancestry. Okay, so you can read the rest of this. And they talk about, they cite J.A. Rogers. They cite J.A. Rogers. Okay. I can't deal with all these ads. Hold on. Okay, they cite J.A. Rogers in here also. This article claims that Queen Charlotte was a mixed race were initially sparked by historian Joel Augustus Rogers, who wrote in 1940s Sex and Race Volume 1 that portraits and contemporary descriptions of Queen Charlotte, quote, clearly show a Negro strain, end quote. Okay, read the rest of this here. What Bridgerton got right about Queen Charlotte. Okay, now, if it's, let's see here. Okay, this Neutral Bullet ad came up. Let me close this thing out, man. All right, I want to go back here quickly to this article dealing with how the Nuremberg laws were inspired by Jim Crow in the U.S. from history.com. Okay, so America had a wide margin, the harshest law of this kind, and this is dealing with the anti-miscegenation laws, okay, in the U.S. In 30, which prohibited interracial marriages in 30 of 48 states in the they're talking about prior to 1967. So they're talking about like the 30s and 40s in the U.S. In particular, some of the state laws threaten severe criminal punishment for interracial marriage. That was something radical Nazis were very eager to do in Germany as well. The idea of banning Jewish and Aryan marriages presented the Nazis with a dilemma. How would they tell who was Jewish and who was not? After all, race and ethnic categories are socially constructed. Race and ethnic categories are socially constructed. The concept of race is man-made. And interracial relationships produce offspring who don't fall neatly into one box. Again, the Nazis looked to America. Quote, connected with these anti-miscegenation laws was a great deal of American jurisprudence. Connected to with these anti-miscegenation laws was a great deal of American jurisprudence on how to classify who belonged to which race. Controversial one-drop rules stipulated that anyone with any Black ancestry was legally Black and could not marry a white person. Because, see, this was all about preserving genetic white survival. And racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. All right. So they were putting these laws in place, even going back to slavery. They were putting these laws in place to preserve genetic white survival and lock African Americans, largely lock them out of being able to intermix with Europeans and marry into families and reap the benefits of being white. Now, you're going to have exceptions to this, of course, but we see even after slavery ends, and we see the lynchings that take place. Okay, and like from 1882 to 1968, there's about 4,743 people lynched in this country. 72% were African Americans, most of them African American men, because it's the man who imposes sex. And they use lynchings as a way to terrorize African Americans and keep us in a low subservient position that they want us to be in. But this is a way to terrorize especially African American men, and keep them away from white women. Controversial one-drop rule stipulated that anyone with any black ancestry was legally black and could not marry a white person. Laws also defined what made a person Asian or Native American in order to prevent these groups from marrying whites. Notably, Virginia had a Pocahontas exception for prominent white families who claimed to be descended from Pocahontas. That was in Virginia. Now, the Nuremberg laws, TOO, came up with a system of determining who belonged to what group, allowing the Nazis to criminalize marriage and sex between Jewish and Aryan people. Rather than adopting a one-drop rule, the Nazis decreed that a Jewish person was anyone who had 3 or more Jewish grandparents. Rather than adopting a one-drop rule, the Nazis decreed that a Jewish person was anyone who had 3 or more Jewish grandparents, which means, as Professor Whitman notes, quote, that American racial classification law was much harsher than anything the Nazis themselves were willing to introduce in Germany, end quote. Now, it should come as no surprise then that the Nazis weren't uniformly condemned in the US before the country entered the war. In the early 1930s, American eugenicists, the eugenics movement, American eugenicists welcomed Nazi ideas about racial purity and republished their propaganda. American aviator Charles Lindbergh accepted a swastika medal from the Nazi Party in 1938. Once the United States entered the war in 1941 after Pearl Harbor's bombed, it took a decidedly anti-Nazi stance. But African American troops noticed the similarities between the two countries, Germany and the US, and confronted them head on with a double V campaign. Its goal, victory abroad, because the African American World War II veterans, the World War II soldiers who were fighting in the war, they had a double V campaign: victory abroad against the Axis powers and victory at home against Jim Crow. So check out this article here from history.com. This deals with how the Nazis were inspired by Jim Crow to craft legal discrimination. The Third Reich studied the United States. This is updated March 26, 2021 from history.com, which is the official website of the History Channel. Okay, so if we go back and look at this piece quickly here from Smithsonian Mag. In 1937, approximately 385 of these 600 to 800 children were forcibly sterilized by the Nazis, and these were children of African descent. Now, per the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, people of African descent in Nazi Germany were socially and economically ostracized. They were barred from attending university, fired from attending a university, fired from their jobs, and even deprived of their citizenship. An unknown number of Afro-Germans were imprisoned in concentration and death camps, but the majority of the country's Black population survived the Third Reich, according to the Weiner Holocaust Library. Okay, so then it goes on and talks about Martha Ndumbe and Ferdinand James Allen. Martha was born in Berlin in 1902. As the online Stolperstein portal notes, her mother, Dorothea Grunwald, was from Hamburg, while her father, Jacob Ndumbe, was a native of Cameroon. He moved to Germany in 1896 to participate in a human zoo that exhibited Africans in racist stereotypical contexts. Now, Robbie Aiken tells DW that discrimination made it difficult for Martha Ndumbe to find work, so she turned to prostitution and petty crimes for her survival. The Nazis imprisoned her as an asocial professional criminal and eventually sent her to the Ravensbrück concentration camp, where she died in 1945. Now, Ferdinand James Allen, meanwhile, was born in 1898 to James Cornelius Allen, who was a Black British musician from the Caribbean, and Lena Panzer, Panzer, a resident of Berlin. He suffered from epilepsy and was killed at the Bernburg Psychiatric Hospital in 1941 as part of Action T4, the Nazis' mass murder of disabled people. As Lois Gilman reported for Smithsonian Magazine in 2007, artist Gunter Demning created the Soperstein Project to recognize individual Holocaust victims. The 4x4-inch brass covered blocks provide a bare outline of a person's life, their name, date of birth, a word or two about their treatment under the Nazi regime, and the date of their murder. They stand in front of the last place the person voluntarily lived. They stand in front of the last place the person voluntarily lived. All right, now, okay, so read the rest of this piece here from Smithsonian Mag. So it goes on to say, Robbie Aiken led the effort to place the Stolperstein stone blocks for Martha and Allen as part of his work researching Germany's Black community and compensation claims by Black Holocaust victims, reports Lisa Wong for the Sheffield-based Star publication. He argues that the invisibility of Black people in the history of the Nazi era reflects such factors as a lack of documentation and reluctance on the part of Germans to contend with the country's colonial past. He argues that the invisibility of Black people in the history of the Nazi era reflects such factors as a lack of documentation and reluctance on the part of Germans to contend with the country's colonial past. Quote, I hope these new memorials help to shed further light on the devastating impact that Nazi rule had on the lives of Germany's Black residents, Aiken said in the statement. Okay, so check out the rest of this article here from SmithsonianMag.com. New memorials in Berlin honor the Holocaust Overlooked Black Victims. And this is from December 3rd, 2021. December 3rd, 2021. Okay, and then there's this other article here from BBC, from the BBC, Being Black in Nazi Germany. You can check this out also. Where's that one? Oh, this one right here. Being Black in Nazi Germany from May 22nd, 2019. Okay, so check that out as well. Okay, be sure to register for the online class I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement of Black Power, 1865 to 1968. You have a special bundle pack where you can register for both classes right now for only $70. It's a $260 value. And then also the my 15 DVD bundle pack, the Michael Imhotep Black History Month bundle pack, that's available right now at historynetwork.com. There's 15 of my lectures, and one of them deals with the origins and the history of Black History Month. So that 15 DVD bundle pack is on sale $100 right now at africanhistorynetwork.com. I'm going to post the link here for it. Okay, because we have those shipping out this week and next week also. We'll post a link here for that. All right. African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast, and email us at TheAHNShow@africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Start 2022 off right. Our current promotion is buy 1 month, get 2 months free. Okay, so we'll post this information here also. All right, and you can join us in class this weekend. So I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Queen Charlotte Sophia is one of the people that we deal with in the class. And some of the things that we talk about in the class, we deal with ancient Africa, ancient history, and we deal with what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place also. We deal with information from Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote The First Americans Were Africans, documented evidence. We deal with, okay, this is not the preview. So we deal with some ancient African history as well, in the African presence in the Americas, going back tens of thousands of years ago. This is Dr. Albert Goodyear, who made the discovery in 2004 in Allendale County, South Carolina. And they found 13 different types of evidence that thoroughly documented African presence in the land we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago. And these were the Khoisan, who come from Southern Africa. They have the oldest DNA on the planet. They go all around the world. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. An October 2012 genetic study published in Science magazine found that the Khoisan in Southern Africa are the oldest ethnic group of modern humans, with their ancestral line originating about 100,000 years ago. The Khoisan, formerly called by the derogatory term Bushmen, are genetically unique, and no other currently known population had separated so early from our common modern human ancestor, according to the report. Okay, let me see something here. The Khoisan live mainly in southern Africa, in territory spanning Botswana, Namibia, Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. They are largely divided into two groups: hunters and gatherers, known as the Sans people, and keepers of livestock, known as the Khoi Khoi. The Khoisan languages include the distinctive click sounds that aren't found in the languages of their neighbors. All right. And when we look at the language spoken in the film Black Panther, that's isiXhosa, which is spoken in Southern Africa and South Africa, isiXhosa. And isiXhosa has the click language in it as well. Because one of the things we talk about in the film, in the class, is the film Black Panther, and how the film Black Panther relates to African history, African culture, African language. So we deal with, it's a ton of information that we deal with in the class. This is why the class is 10 weeks. So we do it 10 consecutive Sundays, basically. So we have book references, articles, video clips, everything. You don't have to buy any of the books to be able to follow along in class. And the class is very visual. Those are some of the slides that I actually use in the class. And okay, so we'll post this link here. So as soon as you register, you can start watching the content, and you can join us in class this weekend. So we just posted a link. You can register for the bundle pack. We register for both classes for only $70. They're regularly $130 each. So it's an excellent bargain for a very limited time only. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct your own behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And also, you can support us, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. So this helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, etc. This is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN Show, SHOW. So when you go to it, it'll say Michael and show my picture there. These other ones here are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. I did not set those up. All right, so look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct your own behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. I'll be on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday. So check that out. Also, download the Black Star Media app to your devices. And you can also watch on Facebook and YouTube at Roland Martin on Facebook and YouTube. All right.